Welcome to another edition of Totes Curious Life. This time we're going to make some repairs on my truck because I was out driving after ice fishing the other day and got stuck. I put some tire chains on, and on my right front tire I threw the chain. And when I did, it damaged my ABS sensor. So today we'll show you how to change the ABS sensor on a 2016 f-250. So what we found out early on, I had a feeling something was wrong because as soon as I got back in my truck after doing that thing with the tire chains, I got these warnings that came up right away. I assumed that because my chain must have hit that ABS sensor. So I have this great code reader, which has been really awesome to have. When I take my codes, it basically will tell me exactly what I got going on. I wait a second and hit the ABS button on my code reader, and then it tells me I have a code failure C0034. I looked that up and it says it's my right front ABS sensor. So we're gonna look into that. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and take your regular old wrench. I believe it's a 22 millimeter on the lugs, and you're welcome to get a chatter gun or anything like that if you like that better. But for this video, I'm just going to show you the tools that come with the truck. First thing I do is I just take a towel, and right here you can see little grooves in this small hubcap. I just put a towel on my rim so that I don't booger anything up. Try to keep from doing more damage than I have to. And I use the end of my lug wrench to pry that off, and if you give it a good pull, it comes right off. Next thing I want to do is just lightly loosen up all my lug nuts. Now you'll notice I'm still not off the ground. Well, that's super important because then my tire doesn't spin, but I don't want to take my lug nuts off yet. First, we're going to jack it up, but we're going to loosen them all up first. So I got my tire off, and just food for thought, I went ahead and used a bottle jack under the frame right there. Before you jack your car up, always put the emergency brake on, make sure it can't roll. Then when I got it off, here's my ABS wire right here. And as you can see, that device that's designed to hold the wire has pulled out of its holder. So my assumption is there's a little nick right here. My assumption is when I threw the chain, that the chain grabbed there and then gave this thing a hard tug and in turn dislodged my ABS wire. But where that locks on is underneath this rotor. So I got to get this brake caliper off and then the rotor off. And once I get to that, I think we'll be able to see it better. The brake caliper has two main bolts. One of them right here, that's 21 millimeter. And the other one right below it is also 21 millimeter. So we're going to take those two bolts off and get the entire brake caliper off. But what you want to do is make sure that you don't hang that brake caliper on the brake line right here. It's a lot of weight. So we're going to hook up a bungee cord off this spring that we can then hang the brake caliper on and keep the weight off of that main brake line. And then we'll do our work from there. So I have the bottle jack under the frame right under the tire, but then I put this jack stand for a little extra safety right up under the frame by the bumper. That way if the truck did roll forward or anything, or if I forgot the emergency brake and all of a sudden the bottle jack tipped over, the whole thing doesn't land on the ground. So we got our caliper off. As you saw, I actually had to take my pry bar and create a little space for the caliper, release a little bit of that hydraulic tension so that I get it to slide off my rotor. After doing that, I just hung it with this bungee cord so that I didn't put any pressure on this brake line. And then my rotor on this particular example is really nice because this rotor is already loose. A lot of times you'll get some corrosion around the inside here where the rotor doesn't just slide off that easily. And when that happens, you can take a mallet and you can hit around the rim here, but don't ever hit where your brake pads actually rub against the rotor itself. You don't want to put any kind of deformity on this section of the rotor. So if your rotor's on and then you want to hit it and you need to hit that part, what I recommend is take a piece of wood and put it between the rotor and your mallet, and then you can hit the piece of wood and it'll work that rotor off. You can also put a little penetrating oil right along just on that place where there's corrosion. Once you get the rotor off, Then you can see right here, there is an exact spot where this here is my ABS sensor right there. And to get that off, we're gonna use a 5mm hex bit. My truck takes a 5mm hex bit, and that'll come right off. But then we'll also use an 8mm wrench right on these brackets here. Now, one of the things I want you to notice is when it's working normally, if you can shine right in here, you see how it is allowed to move side to side. They want that movement to happen so that when your wheel's turning, that you don't put pressure on that cable. And the way they accomplish that is these bolts are designed with a little section that is unthreaded that goes perfectly in those holding brackets. And so you want to make sure to pay attention to that. When you tighten it up at the end, you're never going to tighten it up so much that those little brackets can't move freely. And what that looks like is this right here. There's a little section right up top that allows those brackets to keep moving freely. So when you tighten it up, you're going to tighten it up right up against that section, and then it'll be tight, but the bracket will still be able to move. There's a couple of things you got to undo. One is pretty simple. It's this guy right here. You can just take a screwdriver and open it up, and it'll release the cable from there. These ones aren't difficult, but you just got to pry them up so you get that little section to hold off. The last one is under here, right there. The big white piece will actually come out. So we can just take a screwdriver here and it'll pry this white clip off. Before you pull this one out, verify that the one you purchased has a new one of these white pieces like this, because you don't want to booger it up. If you had to, you could take a small screwdriver, and as you can see, if you lifted this top part, then you could slide that top part right there. Then you could slide the whole clip out and the whole thing would slide off and you could leave that clip in. But I didn't need to do that. So then all I'm gonna do is push down this top piece right here. And when I do that, the bottom of it should come out. And as expected, it doesn't always happen easily. So I'm going to try to do the release from the bottom with a small screwdriver and see if that works a little better. That did work a lot better. Inside here, you can see the contacts. You just want to take a look and make sure the contacts don't look like they have any kind of electrical arcing or anything like that. Right here where the ABS sensor goes down into the bearing system down behind the rotor, we took this bolt out. That was the 5mm hex. Then I like to clean it off a little bit first. Just try to make sure nothing falls down in the hole when you pull it out. So I'm going to shake it around, keep it in the hole. You can have a pneumatic blower or whatever if you want. But then if you give it a little shake and a wiggle, turn, we get it to come out. So it's out like that. Now, the way this is set up, this heat shield from the rotor is a little too big for it just to easily squeeze out. So I'm going to make a minor adjustment with my pry bar here and give myself a little bit of room to work with. And then we'll put that back when we're all finished. A little bit more. See if I can get that to come out of there. Yeah, I can. So now I've got my whole old ABS cable all the way out. So here's my new ABS sensor. It's got a little rubber O-ring right there. I just put a little bit of grease on just to make sure that it seals well and slides smoothly when I put it down inside the hub right there. So we're going to go back underneath where we snuck through. We're going to feed it in. Just like so. You can feel a little bit of pressure as you push it in, which is good. It should be that way. And then our 5mm hex can go in there. Then we're just going to take all of these different connectors that were exact ones we did on the opposite way, and we're going to put them all in. So in order to put the calipers back in, it's not uncommon that you got to squeeze them together a little bit to get them to fit over the rotor. So I put a clamp on the middle of my brake pad, and then I just put a little pressure on it right here and try to squeeze a little bit of the hydraulic fluid back into the brake fluid reservoir and make just a little bit of space in there so that I can get it to slide easily onto the rotor. Now we're just going to connect this electrical connector one more time. It only goes one way, so that's nice. Give it a good push in till it clicks. That should seal it. There's the click. Once it clicks, then it's tough. Then this is what we said, make sure your new one has that white piece on it. You can push it right back in that hole. Then just double check everything. That's hooked up, that's hooked up. These are free to move. Everything looks good. I went ahead and pulled my jack stand out so I can get ready to drop my bottle jack. Before I did, I tightened these up just pretty much as much as I could without putting the tire all the way down. And I go in a star pattern. If you start here, go across over to here, then over to here, then over to here. Don't go around in a circle because you could bind that rotor and have it not sit completely flush against the back where you want it. Once I drop the wheel, I can finish tightening my lug nuts in the same star pattern, and I'm going to torque them. And the Ford F-250 specs are between 150 to 165 foot-pounds of torque. So I'll grab a torque wrench and cinch those down. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you have a great afternoon.